slow integration of the Kashmiri Muslims into the Indian mainstream still remains a work in progress. And suppressing the terrorists or the secessionists or the alienated by force is not an option.
Hello and welcome to Strat News Global. I am Nitin Gokhale. Delhi was devastated in many ways with a blast on 10th of November after many years when some kind of a terror attack took place in Old Delhi, and ever since then the unraveling of the entire plot is keeping the newspapers and television channels and analysts busy. And that's something which came unexpectedly, but for professionals perhaps this was waiting to happen, as some professionals have described it. And therefore I thought we'll get one of those professionals who has watched terrorism and has worked in counter-terrorism, also watched Pakistan, Afghanistan very closely. Familiar face, Ramanathan Kumar is with me to talk about the particular incident and the larger implications of the terror attack that happened in Delhi. Welcome, Kumar.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be back on your show somewhat sooner than anticipated.
Absolutely, because there was this talk that many of us did. In fact, I also mentioned this, that it's been a terror-free kind of period in India, in big cities, in the last decade or so, and somehow the agencies, the police forces, everybody seems to be on their toes and have been able to prevent the frequency of attacks, which used to be very regular in the previous decade or even before that. But that myth has now been shattered with what happened in Delhi the other day. Your first thoughts on why this happened, and then we'll get into the other reasons and who did it and why, what we should watch out for going forward.
Well, I've always maintained that for those involved in the terrorism and counter-terrorism business, I mean, complacency is never an option. So these lulls are always too good to last, and it is when there is a prolonged lull that paradoxically I think one should be most alert. So, there's been a lot of talk, frankly, about white-collar terrorism making an appearance in our country after this incident. And as we were discussing, I mean, the white-collar professionals joining the ranks of terrorist organizations is hardly a new phenomenon.
Globally, at least, that is not a new phenomenon.
I mean, one can take the example of Al-Qaeda, Dr. Ayman al-Zawahiri, a doctor. Bin Laden was a mechanical engineer. Similarly, the ISIS, for instance, its USP was its ability to attract highly educated, well-educated people.
Sure.
From our own country, in fact, you would recall that when people from, it was people from some of our states with the highest literacy rates,
sure,
Kerala, Tamil Nadu and all, it was from there that people went to join the ISKP in Afghanistan. And so therefore, then even the Indian Mujahideen, for instance, when we're talking of doctors, I recollect Yasin Bhatkar, who was operating from Nepal, and he was when he was caught, he was a Unani doctor, not an MBBS doctor.
Sure.
So therefore, this is not a new phenomenon, white-collar terrorists or white-collar terrorism. Yes, of course, if that section of society gets radicalized in our context, of course, it'll open up a whole new, much larger pool of recruitment, and it'll make the jobs of our agencies, security agencies, the police, etc., very that much more difficult, and make Pakistan's job also that much easier.
Easier, yeah.
But in this particular case, I would still, pause before I sort of arrive at the conclusion that this is the beginning of a new wave of white-collar terrorism in India. I think in this case, it is a sprawling network from Pulwama to Faridabad to Saharanpur,
yes.
etc. But in the end, all the threads, at least as far as the the information available in the public domain is concerned, all the threads do seem to be leading back to Kashmir. And I'm also struck by the fact that again, going entirely by the information available in the public domain, it was the postering by the Jaish-e-Mohammed on the outskirts of Srinagar, which in a sense led to the security agencies picking up the trail of some of the members of this network.
Exactly. But I'll just stop you here for a moment. When we talk about white collar, I mean, when the media is talking about white collar terrorism or white collar terrorists, in the Kashmir context, since you've watched Kashmir also quite closely for decades, is this a new phenomenon, or is it also just a manifestation of the alienation that some of these educated people in Kashmir feel? What is your take on that?
I would tend to agree with the latter. Yes, it is a fact that a large number of terrorists from Kashmir who've gone to Pakistan, been trained and come back, many of them are low-level foot soldiers who certainly are not cannot be described as being well educated. But that point which you make about alienation, I think that is the crux of the issue. And at least prima facie, I think this incident does show that there are deep pockets, or there is widespread alienation persisting among the youth of Kashmir, including the educated sections. And I think an argument can well be made that that is really the root cause of something like this happening. And therefore, I think if one is, I think, clinical and professional about this, even the basic premise of the constitutional changes of 2019 somehow eradicating terrorism from Kashmir, I think that premise also has to be revisited, because clearly there is widespread alienation, and that is what is making even thinking people, highly educated people, resort to the last option of terrorism.
So the optics in Jammu and Kashmir over the past 4 or 5 years is that it's getting normalized, it is becoming like any other Indian state. I mean, we have spoken about this earlier, tourism flourishing, businesses opening up and doing well. Was just external manifestation, or I would say visible manifestation of the constitutional changes, or the kind of integration that India wanted to make with, I mean, they wanted Kashmir to be integrated with the rest of India. But people have probably, those who have now got alienated or have got radicalized, have suppressed their feelings and have waited for their time to come. Is there do you think, external stimulus in terms of what Pakistan does or inspires or supports or controls or sort of plans for them? Is there an indication of that in this case?
Yes, I think that also is a very important aspect. I think there is also a danger that in this, in this somewhat sort of knee-jerk analysis and assessment and of, homegrown terrorism, white-collar terrorists, and so on and so forth. While yes, I mean, the evidence, the information available publicly is limited, but I think, and I'm sure more will emerge as time progresses. But I think it is also not wise to let Pakistan off the hook, so to speak.
Absolutely.
Whether there was any element of external sponsorship, if it was there, to what extent, whether it was externally inspired, externally guided, externally operationalized. These are all sort of nuances and degrees of control which Pakistan and the ISI sort of exercises, and this is definitely all these aspects that I mentioned. Whether there was external involvement, to what degree it was there, I think these are matters that still await determination. But the very fact that the Jaish, there is a Jaish angle
to it, yes.
Does indicate that at some level, there is an external dimension to it.
Yes. But the government has been very careful in not laying the blame entirely at Pakistan's doorsteps so far, at least in the Cabinet Committee on Security Resolution. But I'm sure investigation will reveal further routes or whatever links that there are. But you were speaking about that poster. And I wanted to bring in the work that the agencies have to do. It's a thankless job. But describe to our viewers, what happens when you join threads, when you join dots, and then come to it. Because that poster led to multiple things. And what is your sense on that?
So this is the point, I think, in intelligence and even in counter-terrorism work. Often it's a question of deciding or determining whether the glass is half full or half empty. I mean, the fact that an attack takes place, it's like a goalkeeper who is allowed the opposition to score a goal.
Sure.
But then there are, so many other saves which are effected,
right,
which are taken for granted and they pass unnoticed. Now, in this case too, I mean, even as the attack at the Red Fort was materializing, other parts of the network had been detected, people had been picked up, explosives had been recovered, and so on and so forth. Those are successes.
Yes.
But the fact that the attack took place and people were killed, that is a failure.
Sure.
So often in this business, failure and success go hand in hand, and it's very difficult to separate the two. Even so many high-profile cases, including our own, 26/11 attacks. I mean, I don't want to go beyond what has appeared in the media so far, but it is not as if an alert was not sounded. It was not as if some parts of that conspiracy were not picked up. Even, as sort of late as a few days before the event, when there was a transmission from the Arabian Sea by an entity which was known to be linked to the LET, that was picked up, an alert was sounded. The Navy went into took whatever
action
it could take, and yet it was not sufficient to prevent the attack. So something like that seems to have happened this time also. The agencies picked up some clues, but they were not able to stop the attack when it took place.
One of them slipped away.
One of them slipped away. So this is an ongoing process. One can argue by the amount of explosives and all that seem to have been recovered that perhaps greater damage has been prevented. But the fact that 13 people were killed and there was an explosion at the Red Fort, which is high on symbolism, that is bad enough. And the other thing that you were mentioning also, about Pakistan, its involvement, etc.
Yes.
Let's also not forget the fact that, Pakistan has often alternated between these tactics, the modus operandi of using local nationals and Pakistani nationals. If you look at the entire history of terrorism in Kashmir, initially in the first flush, it was
the foreign terrorists.
The Kashmiris in the late 1980s who went across.
Right.
But when Pakistan saw that that was not enough, then they sent their own people.
Yes.
So then they created the fig leaf of the Indian Mujahideen and various other organizations.
Right.
So these phases have alternated. So just because Indian nationals or locals are involved doesn't necessarily mean that there is not an external angle. It could be there, it may not be there.
Yeah, I fully agree, but that is the fact. But that also takes us to the fact that why educated people in Kashmir are motivated enough to carry out acts which are obviously dangerous to themselves and their families and otherwise. So they are radicalized enough. So that shows that despite all the efforts over the years, over decades, to integrate Kashmir and Kashmiris, there are remnants of alienation and separatism. Now, can we trace it back to anything, or is it just that historical fact that cannot be overcome?
Well, I don't think there's anything that cannot be overcome. And of course, this has a long history going back to the partition.
Sure.
But now that you bring it up, I am reminded of something that, one of our ablest civil servants wrote way back in the early, he wrote some 2 decades ago, but referring to events that took place almost 4 decades ago.
Okay.
And I'm referring to Mr. B.K. Nehru.
Okay. He was governor.
Who was the governor of J&K in the early 1980s and subsequently wrote a fascinating book called Nice Guys Finish Second.
Yes.
So Mr. B.K. Nehru was the governor of J&K in the early 1980s when Sheikh Abdullah was still alive, when Sheikh Abdullah actually passed away. And he was the governor when Farooq Abdullah's first government was elected following the elections held immediately after the demise of Sheikh Abdullah in the summer of 1983. And the Congress was in power in Delhi.
Yes.
Mrs. Gandhi was the Prime Minister.
Right.
And the Congress felt that they should have been in power and
in Jammu and
Kashmir, and that Farooq should have struck a deal with them. And to cut a long story short, and to come to the point that we were discussing, very soon after the elections, within a few months, Mrs. Gandhi was advised to dismiss the government of Farooq Abdullah.
Oh.
He was very.
It was easy in those years.
Absolutely.
Article 356 to be imposed.
Absolutely. And he was a novice at that time. He made a lot of mistakes. And the governor, of course, was a wise man.
Very
Mr.
old
Nehru was no namby-pamby administrator or peacenik. He He was a seasoned administrator.
Very much.
And a man of robust common sense.
Sure.
And he tried his level best to dissuade New Delhi from adopting this course of action. And he felt that it would be counterproductive. But Delhi wouldn't listen. And sometime in early 1984, Governor Nehru wrote a 12-point aid memoir, which he subsequently passed on to Delhi. It was, of course, ignored, and the rest, of course, is history. But one of the, I think, the seminal points that the governor made in his note, and I'm trying to recollect the words from my memory, but he wrote that, about the sort of adverse consequences
of such an action.
He said that the slow integration of the Kashmiri Muslims into the mainstream will suffer a setback.
If the government is dismissed.
That's right.
Oh.
The secessionists will gain the upper hand, and suppressing them by force is not a solution.
He was clairvoyant.
Yes, I think clairvoyant would not be an exaggeration. I think 4 decades after this was written, these lines were written, I think they continue to have a salience. And if you were to ask me what all this shows, I would say that that slow integration of the Kashmiri Muslims into the Indian mainstream still remains a work in progress, and suppressing the terrorists or the secessionists or the alienated by force is not an option.
Okay, it has to be a slow process, gradual process, but not just by force, but by various means.
Yes, we have to be firm, and I think the other point, of course, is that all those who follow terrorism say that that terrorism thrives in conditions where there is, where sections of where individuals or communities feel strongly aggrieved. There is a strong sense of alienation.
Sure.
And the state sort of does not adequately redress those grievances. And I think the important thing is that we in India should make sure that such conditions are never created in any country or any part of our country. I think that is the most important thing.
I think that is the big takeaway from this entire so-called white-collar terrorist module or terrorist network that we've just seen unearthed in this entire episode. But just on the note, we'll end before I end, must tell you about B.K. Nehru. I had the good fortune of meeting him in 1990 as a young reporter, and we had just launched a new newspaper, and I asked him that you were a governor in Shillong, undivided Assam, at the point when Assam was then divided into Meghalaya, Mizoram, and other states. So what happened? So he said, despite being what he was, B.K. Nehru, he was from the Nehru family. He said, I blame Jawaharlal for all the problems in the Northeast. So I was taken aback as a young reporter, as a 28-year-old editor. So he explained to me that in the 1960s, when the Nagas were asking for an autonomous district, Jawaharlal Nehru gave them a separate state. And that opened up the floodgates of demand from other communities and other ethnic groups for separate states. So I blame Jawaharlal for Northeast problems, is what he said. He was very upfront and very candid about this. So obviously he was a wise man. So if he did something in J&K 40 years ago, what he said, and which is proving to be prophetic in many ways, I'm not surprised, really. But thank you very much for your insights. And I think another great point that you made was that you cannot let Pakistan off the hook in this case, what has happened, because Jaish-e-Mohammed being there, and the mention of Jaish-e-Mohammed, the lady doctor who was entrusted with the task of creating a women's wing of Jaish-e-Mohammed, tells us that this danger is far from over, and Pakistan will never give up until it sort of succeeds like this. So maybe more occasions for us to discuss, but thanks for your insight and for historical anecdotes that you always bring in from your knowledge and from your memory. Thanks for that.
Thank you.
Keep watching Strat News Global, and of course your comments are very valuable, so keep sending them, and of course subscribe and share this particular video. Subscribe to our channel. For the time being, it's goodbye.